We live in a culture today that says weeping is a sign of weakness. We live in a culture today that says a man must suppress his feelings. We live in a culture today where the younger generation is ashamed of crying. They don't think it's the right thing to do. They must deal with it themselves. It's okay. But can I tell you guys today that it's okay to weep? It is okay to cry. It is okay to pour your heart out before God. Young people, there's nothing wrong with not being okay. It is okay to not be okay. We walk around at times with masks on and we put a smile on and we act like everything's fine and dandy. But the truth is, we suffer in life. Life is full of heartache and pain and suffering. And it's okay not to be okay. When somebody asks you, are you doing okay? And you smile and you say, I'm doing fine, but inside you feel like dying, it's okay. One of the biggest lies I believed as a teenager was that I was the only one going through the things that I was going through. I would show up in places and I'd be the life of a party. I'd smile and laugh and make everybody else laugh, and I'd go home and contemplate suicide. I didn't think it was okay to just express my emotions. I didn't think it was okay to be vulnerable. But before God, if anywhere, before God and God's people in this house today, we should be able to be vulnerable. We should be able to come to the altar and pour out our hearts to God and let Him know what's going on. We should be able to come to God's people and be real and honest and raw and let somebody know, I'm not doing okay today. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay to weep, men. It's okay to weep, young people. It's okay to weep. We need to weep. The emotions we have, God gave them to us, and He has emotions as well. And His desire is that we would fall down at times and pour out our souls to Him. And I'm convinced today the church is in the state that it's in because people do not leave a puddle of tears at the altar as often as they should. It's okay to weep. It's okay not to be okay. God, let me tell you something, God will allow things to happen in your life. He will bring you to a place at times where you feel like you can't take another step. Don't make no mistake about it. Verses 5 and 6 says that it was the Lord who closed her womb. It was the Lord that done something that caused some suffering and pain. It was the Lord that done something to bring Hannah to a place where she was desperate enough to turn to Jesus and turn to God and to seek after Him like she never had in her life. It was the Lord that had done something. Sometimes God will do something to cause some pain, but listen to this. All the time God will allow something to cause some pain. It's not always His doing, but it is always His allowing. One of the most misquoted verses in the Bible is 1 Corinthians 10:13. I know y'all thinking, well, God won't put no more on you than you can bear. Brother, that's not in the Bible. There's not a place in the Bible that speaks of that. The Bible verse that we often think about when we hear that is 1 Corinthians 10:13. The Bible says, no temptation has overtaken, not common to man. God is faithful, and He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. This verse is talking about temptation and sin and falling into sin. It's not talking about suffering. It's not talking about circumstances. It's not talking about burdens to bear. It's not talking about pain. It's talking about temptation and sin. It is foolish for us to think that God will not bring us to a place at times. It is foolish for us to think that God will not allow something to happen in our lives that we feel like we can't take another step. It is not biblical to think that God will not bring you to a place where you're so desperate you do the only thing Hannah could do, and you turn to God in desperate need of someone to bear your burdens. I guarantee you, if you told Job, don't worry, Job, God won't put no more on you than you can bear, he'd look at you like you lost your mind. He lost his property, his livestock, his children. He was plagued with a disease, and instead of being comforted by his friends, he was persecuted and condemned. And the Bible says Job got to a place where he didn't want to live anymore. God, just take me out of this world. I'm done living. I can't go through this no more. And then he goes to the last place he met with the Lord. He goes back to the place of sacrifice. And he takes the ashes and he covers himself in ashes as a sign of mourning. And he cried out to God, and God met him at the altar. Job experienced what it means to bear something greater than his ability to carry. It is okay to weep. His heart was shattered, and he experienced God in a moment in his life, as Hannah is doing now. At a moment in his life where he felt like he couldn't take another step. Jeremiah preached for over 40 years. And as far as we know, nobody got saved. He understood the grace and mercy of God, and yet he sees an entire nation of people rebel against the grace and mercy of God. He sees an entire nation of people say no to the salvation that's offered. He knew what was to come. The Bible says Jeremiah got to a place where he said, I'm not preaching no more. I'm not talking to these people. God, if you want to just take me, you take me. I'm done. He reached a place in his life, even where not only did he not want to preach, but he reached a place where he didn't want to live. He was bearing a burden that was too heavy for him to carry by himself. Elijah, on the run from Jezebel, finds himself in a cave, crying out to God, saying, take my life. I don't want to live another day. And God showed up in a small, still voice and encouraged him and picked him up and sent him on his way. It is okay to weep today, church. Jesus, the Son of God, the strongest man to have ever lived, at times would weep and cry, being filled with compassion. There's nothing wrong with falling down and weeping before God, and I'm convinced that it is His desire for us to do so.